The ships came on a Tuesday morning, blocking out the sun over every major city on Earth. They were massive, each one the size of a small country, floating silently in the sky like steel mountains. Commander Wu stood on the roof of the military headquarters in Seoul, watching the largest ship hover directly above the city. He had fought in 3 wars during his 20 years of service, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all channels," a young officer said, running up to him with a tablet. "Every language on Earth. They want to talk." Wu took the device and read the message. The words were formal and cold. The Galactic Confederation welcomed humanity to the greater universe. They came in peace. They wanted Earth to join their alliance. But as Wu read further, his jaw tightened. The terms were clear. Earth would be a protected species, which meant humans would have no voice in galactic decisions, no voting rights, no military contributions that mattered. They would be like children under the care of superior beings. Across the city in the diplomatic quarter, Ambassador Demi was reading the same message. She sat in her office, surrounded by screens showing alien faces of 12 different species. They all looked at her with the same expression, pity mixed with contempt. One of them, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, spoke first. "Ambassador Demi, we understand this must be difficult for your people to accept. But you must understand, humanity is simply too young, too inexperienced to participate in galactic affairs. Your weapons are primitive. Your soldiers have only fought each other. You know nothing of real warfare." Demi kept her face calm, though anger burned in her chest. "We have survived countless wars. We have rebuilt civilizations from ashes. We are not as weak as you think." Another alien laughed. This one had scales and eyes like a cat. "We have reviewed your history. Your conflicts are small, local. You fight with chemical explosives and metal bullets. Our enemies use weapons that can destroy stars. Please accept our protection. It is for your own good." The meeting ended badly. Demi had no choice but to sign the agreement. Earth needed access to galactic trade and technology. Isolation would destroy them economically. But as she signed, she made a secret call to Wu. 3 months passed. Earth was now officially part of the Confederation, but only in name. Humans were treated like pets by the other species. Then came the demand that changed everything. The Confederation was at war with a species called the Devourers. They were insect-like creatures that consumed entire planets. The war had been going on for 50 years, and the Confederation was losing ground. They needed more soldiers. Every species had to contribute troops based on their population. For Earth, that meant 5,000 soldiers. High Arbiter, the leader of the Confederation Council, delivered the news himself. He appeared on screens worldwide, his massive form covered in golden armor. "Humanity will provide 5,000 soldiers for the war effort. They will serve as support personnel, guard duty, supply transport. We do not expect them to face combat. They are too fragile for that." Wu watched the broadcast with Captain standing beside him. She was one of the best soldiers he had ever trained, a special forces operator who had survived missions that should have killed her 10 times over. She was small, barely 5.5 feet tall, but she could fight like a demon. "Support personnel," she said quietly. "They think we're only good for carrying boxes." "Let them think that," Wu replied. "We'll show them what humans can do." The recruitment began immediately. The Confederation expected Earth to struggle to find volunteers. They were wrong. Within a week, over 50,000 soldiers had applied. Veterans from every nation stepped forward. Young soldiers eager to prove themselves signed up. The Confederation was shocked by the response, but they still treated it as a joke. General On, the alien military commander, watched videos of human training exercises. He saw soldiers running obstacle courses, firing rifles, practicing hand-to-hand combat. He laughed so hard his subordinates worried he would hurt himself. "Look at them," he said, pointing at the screen. "They tire after running a few miles. Their weapons can barely pierce armor, and their combat training, It's like watching children play fight. This will be entertaining at least." His officers agreed. They shared the videos across the Confederation networks. Millions of aliens watched and laughed. Humans became a joke, a source of amusement. Some aliens even started betting on how long the humans would last before they ran home crying. But not everyone laughed. Sub-Commander Aura, a veteran officer who had fought the Devourers for 30 years, watched the videos with different eyes. She saw something the others missed. The humans moved with efficiency. Their tactics were simple but effective, and in their eyes she saw something familiar. It was the look of people who had seen death and survived. She sent a private message to General On. "Do not underestimate them. They may surprise us." On deleted the message without reading it fully. The day came for the human soldiers to depart. 5,000 of them, led by Commander Wu, boarded the Confederation transport ships. Captain commanded the Special Forces unit. Sergeant Jin Ho, a demolitions expert with scars covering his arms, led the engineering team. Lieutenant, a quiet man who could hack any computer system, managed the tech division. And Private Na, just 22 years old, carried a sniper rifle that was taller than she was. As the ships lifted off from Earth, families waved goodbye. Many cried, believing they would never see their loved ones again. The Confederation had made it clear that this was a dangerous assignment. Support personnel often died in this war, crushed by falling debris or caught in crossfire. But the soldiers aboard those ships were not afraid. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. They knew what the aliens thought of them: weak, soft, useless. Wu stood at the window of the transport ship, watching Earth grow smaller behind them. Approached and stood beside him. "They have no idea what's coming," she said. Wu smiled grimly. "No, they don't." The journey to the war zone would take 2 weeks. During that time, the human soldiers trained every day. They studied the Devourers, learning their tactics and weaknesses. They practiced with their weapons until they could field strip and reassemble them blindfolded. They ran drills until they moved as one unit. The alien crew members watched with confusion. Why were support personnel training so hard? Why did they look so serious? These were just humans. They would be cleaning toilets and moving supplies. There was no need for all this preparation. But Wu knew better. He had read the reports carefully. He knew that support personnel was just a polite term for cannon fodder. The Confederation expected these humans to die. They were being sent to the most dangerous positions, the places where the Devourers attacked most often. The aliens thought humans were expendable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. As the transport ships approached forward Base Sigma 9, a massive orbital platform on the edge of Devourer space, Wu gathered his officers for one final meeting. "They think we're weak," he said, looking at each face. "They think we'll break at the first sign of danger. We're going to prove them wrong, not with words, with action. When the time comes, we fight like we've always fought. We fight to win." The officers nodded. They understood. This was not just about surviving. This was about showing the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The ships docked at the station, and the doors opened. The human soldiers stepped out into their new reality, ready for whatever came next. Forward Base Sigma 9 was larger than any city on Earth. The orbital platform stretched for miles in every direction, home to over 200,000 soldiers from 11 different species. When the human transport ships docked, crowds of alien soldiers gathered to watch. They pointed and laughed as the humans marched out in their standard combat gear. "Look how small they are," one alien said, towering over them at nearly 8 feet tall. "And they brought projectile weapons," another laughed. "How primitive." General On was waiting at the docking bay. He looked down at Commander Wu with barely hidden disgust. "Commander, your people will be assigned to Section 7. You will handle waste disposal, equipment maintenance, and supply transportation. Stay out of the way of real soldiers." Wu saluted without showing any emotion. "Understood, General." The human soldiers were led to their quarters in the oldest, most run-down section of the base. The rooms were cramped and dirty. The equipment was outdated. It was clear they were being treated as second-class citizens, but none of the humans complained. They simply cleaned their quarters, organized their gear, and waited. The first 2 weeks were brutal. The humans were given the worst jobs on the base. They cleaned toilets. They hauled garbage. They moved heavy crates while alien soldiers stood around making jokes. Captain was assigned to scrub floors in the command center. Sergeant Jin Ho spent his days fixing broken equipment that the aliens had abandoned. Private Na was told to paint walls. The mockery was constant. Alien soldiers would walk past and call them names. Soft skins, bobbies, useless meat. Some would deliberately make messes just to watch humans clean them up. Others would trip humans in the hallways and laugh. Lieutenant reported everything to Wu each night. "Morale is holding," he said. "The team is angry, but they're staying disciplined." "Good," Wu replied. "Let them keep thinking we're weak. Our time will come." That time came sooner than expected. On day 17, alarms screamed throughout the base. Red lights flashed in every corridor. A Devourer scouting force had attacked Outpost Delta 3, a small station 15 miles from the main base. It was a monitoring post with 50 alien soldiers and a lot of sensitive equipment. General On immediately ordered his best units to respond, but the Devourers were fast. By the time the first response teams were gearing up, reports came in that the outpost was being overrun. The alien soldiers there were retreating, abandoning their positions. Wu heard the alarms from Section 7. He grabbed his radio. "All human units, gear up. We're moving." "Sir, we haven't been ordered to respond," one of his officers said. "I don't care, move now." Within 3 minutes, 50 human soldiers were armed and running toward the transport bay. They moved fast, their boots pounding on the metal floors. Alien soldiers watched in confusion as the humans rushed past them. "Where are they going?" someone asked. "Probably running away," another laughed. But the humans weren't running away. They commandeered a transport shuttle and Wu took the pilot's seat. He had flown similar craft during Earth's wars. Within seconds, they were launching toward the outpost. Captain checked her weapons as they flew. She carried 2 pistols, 4 knives, and a rifle. Beside her, Sergeant Jin Ho was assembling something from spare parts he had collected during his maintenance work. It looked like a bomb. "What is that?" asked. Jin Ho grinned. "Something special." The shuttle landed hard near the outpost. Through the windows, they could see the alien soldiers retreating toward their evacuation ships. The Devourers were everywhere, their black insect bodies crawling over the station's walls. They were the size of large dogs, with 6 legs and mandibles that could tear through steel. Wu opened the shuttle door. "Move, defensive positions, cover the retreat." The humans poured out and immediately took up positions. They worked like a machine, each soldier knowing exactly where to go. Private Na climbed onto the shuttle's roof with her sniper rifle. Lieutenant set up a mobile computer terminal, hacking into the outpost's defense systems. The rest formed a firing line between the retreating aliens and the Devourers. The first Devourer that came into range died before it knew what happened. Na's bullet entered through its left eye and exploded out the back of its head. She worked the bolt on her rifle and fired again. Another Devourer fell. The creatures noticed the humans and charged. 50 Devourers rushed across the open ground, moving terrifyingly fast. The alien soldiers on the evacuation ships watched, expecting to see the humans torn apart. Instead, they witnessed something they had never seen before. The humans opened fire with disciplined precision. Every shot counted. They didn't spray bullets wildly like many alien soldiers did. They aimed, they breathed, they squeezed triggers. Devourers fell in waves. When the creatures got within 30 meters, Sergeant Jin Ho pressed a button. His improvised bombs, planted in the ground during the first minute of arrival, exploded in a chain reaction. The blast threw devourer bodies into the air. The survivors hesitated, confused. That was when Captain moved. She broke from the line and rushed forward, faster than should have been possible. She reached the first devourer and slid under its snapping mandibles. Her knife found the weak spot under its throat. The creature collapsed. She was already moving to the next one. The other humans watched their captain fight hand-to-hand with creatures that outweighed her by 200 pounds. She moved like water, dodging every attack, her blades finding vital spots with surgical precision. In 30 seconds, she had killed 5 devourers alone. The watching aliens couldn't believe what they were seeing. One of them, Sub-Commander Ara, was recording everything on her personal device. "Impossible," she whispered. The battle lasted 8 minutes. When the last devourer fell, the humans stood among 53 dead creatures. Not a single human had been injured. They hadn't even used all their ammunition. Wu checked his soldiers, then opened a radio channel to the base. "Outpost Delta 3 is secure. Enemy forces eliminated. No human casualties." There was a long silence before General On responded. "What? How?" "We did our job, General, requesting permission to return to base." The humans boarded their shuttle and flew back, leaving the alien soldiers at the outpost staring at the battlefield in shock. When they landed at Forward Base Sigma 9, a crowd had gathered. Word of what happened had spread fast. The aliens looked at the humans differently now. The jokes had stopped. General On was waiting at the landing bay. He walked up to Wu, his expression unreadable. "Your actions were not authorized, Commander." "No, sir, they were not. I take full responsibility." On studied the human for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "You will report to my office in 1 hour. We need to discuss your unit's capabilities." That night, the video of Captain fighting the Devourers hand-to-hand spread across the Confederation networks. Millions of aliens watched in silence. The small human female moved with a speed and grace that seemed impossible. Her kills were efficient, almost beautiful in their precision. In the human quarters, the soldiers gathered to eat dinner. They were exhausted but satisfied. They had proven something important today. Private Na cleaned her rifle while Sergeant Jin Ho told jokes. Lieutenant was already planning improvements to the outpost's defense systems. Captain sat next to Wu. "They're not laughing anymore." "No," Wu agreed. "But this was just the beginning. They still think this was luck. We need to show them it wasn't." Across the base in the alien barracks, soldiers were having very different conversations. Some were excited, talking about the human tactics they had witnessed. Others were scared, realizing that these weak creatures might actually be dangerous. A few were angry, upset that their worldview had been challenged. Sub-Commander Ara sat in her quarters, watching the battle footage for the 10th time. She had been right. These humans were not what they seemed. She made a decision then. She would request to work with the human units. She wanted to learn from them. General On sat in his office, staring at reports. The humans had 0 casualties, 53 confirmed kills, perfect tactical execution. It should have been impossible for a support unit. He had been wrong about them. The question was, how wrong? He pulled up Earth's military history and started reading with new eyes. What he found made his blood run cold. These humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. Their entire history was one long war. They had perfected the art of killing with limited resources. They had survived by being adaptable, creative, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. "We made a mistake," he said to the empty room. In the darkness of space, more Devourer ships were moving toward Confederation territory. A real battle was coming, and for the first time in 50 years, General On felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. 3 months after the outpost battle, the Devourers launched their largest attack in 10 years. 3 Confederation worlds came under assault simultaneously. Millions of civilians needed evacuation. The Confederation military was stretched thin, trying to defend all 3 planets at once. On the planet Taros 7, there was a problem. The only route for evacuation ships passed through a narrow valley called Razor Pass. It was 20 miles long, with steep cliffs on both sides. If the Devourers captured that valley, 30,000 civilians would be trapped. General On studied the battle map in his command center. He needed someone to hold the pass while evacuation ships made their runs. It would take 72 hours to get everyone off the planet. The problem was that the Devourers were sending 15,000 soldiers toward that pass. He would need at least 5,000 troops to hold it, maybe more. He didn't have 5,000 troops to spare, but he had 800 humans. When Commander Wu received the orders, he understood immediately what was happening. This was a suicide mission. They were being sent to die so that alien civilians could escape. He called his officers together to explain. "We're being asked to hold Razor Pass for 3 days against 15,000 Devourers," he said calmly. "Command doesn't expect us to succeed. They expect us to delay the enemy long enough for the evacuations to complete. That's all." Captain spoke first. "So we're buying time with our lives." "Yes." Sergeant Jin Ho cracked his knuckles. "How much explosive can we take with us?" Lieutenant was already pulling up maps of the valley on his tablet. "The cliffs are unstable. We could work with that." Private Na checked her rifle. 15,000 targets. Will need a lot of ammunition." Wu looked at his officers with pride. Not one of them suggested retreating. Not one of them complained. They were already planning how to win. Dr. Mi Young, the unit's combat medic, entered the room. She was small and quiet, but she had kept dozens of soldiers alive during combat. "I've been studying the local plant life," she said. "Some of the flowers here produce a compound that might affect Devourer sensory organs. I can make something useful." Colonel Sung, who had arrived with the second wave of human reinforcements, stepped forward. "My unit will take the north end of the pass. We'll funnel them into kill zones." "Good," Wu said. "We have 12 hours to prepare before they arrive. Let's make it count." The humans worked through the night. Sergeant Jin Ho and his team rigged the entire valley with explosives, hiding them in the rocks and under the sand. Lieutenant hacked into the planet's communication satellites, giving them eyes everywhere. Private Na and the other snipers found perfect positions high on the cliffs. Dr. Mi Young worked in a makeshift lab, creating chemical weapons from local plants. By dawn, Razor Pass had been transformed into a death trap. The Devourers came at sunrise. 15,000 of them, moving in massive waves like a dark flood pouring through the valley. They clicked and hissed, their mandibles snapping in anticipation. They had fought the Confederation for 50 years and always won through sheer numbers. This would be no different. They were wrong. The first 1,000 Devourers entered the valley. Private Na watched them through her scope from a position 1,200 meters away. She could see the leader, slightly larger than the others. She adjusted for wind, breathed out slowly, and fired. The leader's head exploded. The bullet continued through and killed the Devourer behind it. 2 kills with 1 shot. That was the signal. Every human sniper opened fire at once. Devourers fell by the dozens, dropping so fast their own troops trampled them. The creatures looked around in confusion. They couldn't see where the shots were coming from. The humans were too far away, too well hidden. The Devourers charged forward, trying to escape the killing zone. That's when Sergeant Jin Ho triggered the first set of explosives. A section of cliff collapsed, burying 300 creatures under tons of rock. The valley filled with dust and smoke. When the dust cleared, Captain and her close combat team were waiting. They had rappelled down from the cliffs and positioned themselves behind the enemy. Now they attacked from the rear, their blades flashing. The Devourers were caught between gunfire from ahead and knives from behind. The first attack broke. The Devourers retreated, leaving 800 dead in the valley. They regrouped and tried again. The second wave came with more coordination. They spread out, making themselves harder to hit. They moved faster, trying to overwhelm the defenders through speed. Lieutenant watched them from his mobile command center and smiled. He pressed a button. The valley filled with sound, had hacked into the planet's weather control system and it. Now massive speakers hidden in the rocks blasted noise at frequencies that hurt Devourer hearing. The creatures stumbled, disoriented. That's when Dr. Mi Young's chemical weapons deployed. Canisters hidden throughout the valley released green gas. It smelled like flowers to humans, but to Devourers it was agony. Their sensory organs burned. They couldn't smell, couldn't communicate with their pheromones. The coordination of their attack fell apart. Now Wu ordered. The humans counterattacked. Colonel Sung led 300 soldiers in a charge down the valley. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons firing in controlled bursts. The Devourers tried to fight back, but they were blind and confused. The humans cut through them like a knife through paper. The second wave broke. 2,000 more Devourers lay dead. The battle continued for 3 days and 3 nights. The Devourers kept coming, wave after wave, trying to break through. They learned from each attack, changed their tactics, tried new approaches, but the humans adapted faster. On the second day, the Devourers tried to climb the cliffs to reach the snipers. Private Nuh shot climbing creatures until her barrel overheated. Then she switched rifles and kept shooting. By evening, 50 Devourer bodies hung from the cliff face. Sergeant Jin Ho ran out of prepared explosives on the second night, so he started making new ones from captured Devourer weapons and equipment parts. His improvised bombs were even more devastating than the originals. Dr. Mi Young's medical station never stopped working. Soldiers came in wounded, and she patched them up and sent them back to fight. She performed 3 surgeries with bullets flying overhead. She saved 17 lives in conditions that would have killed most people from stress alone. Captain fought for 4 hours straight on the third day, holding alone while her team repositioned. She killed 200 Devourers with her knives and bare hands. When reinforcements finally reached her, she was covered in blood, standing on a pile of bodies, still ready to fight. Lieutenant didn't sleep for the entire 3 days. He coordinated every aspect of the defense from his command center, moving troops like chess pieces, always staying 1 step ahead of the enemy. On the third night, he hacked into the Devourer command network and filled it with false orders, sending half their force marching in the wrong direction. Commander Wu led from the front lines, fighting alongside his soldiers. On the final day, when ammunition was running low and exhaustion was setting in, he gave a speech that would become legendary across the galaxy. "They outnumber us 20 to 1, he shouted over the sounds of battle. "They're stronger, faster, and they don't feel fear, but they're not us. They don't have what we have. They've never had to fight for their survival like we have. Every human alive today comes from a long line of survivors. Our ancestors conquered this planet against impossible odds. We carry their strength in our blood, so stand your ground. Show these creatures what humans are made of. We're not here to survive. We're here to win." The soldiers roared their approval and threw themselves back into battle with renewed energy. 72 hours after the battle began, the last evacuation ship lifted off from Taros 7. 30,000 civilians were safe. The mission was complete. Reinforcements arrived 30 minutes later, led by Subcommander Ara. She expected to find a battlefield full of human bodies. Instead, she found 600 humans still standing, tired but alive. They were surrounded by 12,000 dead Devourers. The valley floor was invisible under the carpet of bodies. Ara walked through the battlefield in stunned silence. The other alien soldiers with her couldn't speak. This was impossible. 800 soldiers against 15,000 and the 801. Commander Wu met her at the valley entrance. He was covered in dirt and blood, his uniform torn, but his eyes were clear. Mission accomplished, Subcommander. The civilians are safe. Ara looked at this small human who had just achieved the impossible. How? Was all she could manage to say. Wu smiled tiredly. We did what humans do best. We survived. The footage from Razor Pass spread across the galaxy within hours. Every news network, every military channel, every social media platform showed the same images. Humans fighting against overwhelming odds and winning. Captain covered in blood but still standing. Private Na making impossible shots. Sergeant Jin Ho's explosions collapsing entire cliff faces. Dr. Mi Young saving lives under fire. The galaxy watched and realized they had been very, very wrong about humanity. The Confederation Council held an emergency session 3 days after Razor Pass. High Arbiter sat at the head of the massive chamber, surrounded by representatives from all 12 member species. Every screen in the room showed the same footage. Humans fighting devourers with skill and courage that everything the Confederation thought they knew. We have a problem, began. His voice was heavy with something he rarely felt: shame. We were wrong about humanity, completely wrong. Ambassador Demi stood in the center of the chamber, facing the council. For months she had endured their condescension and dismissal. Now they looked at her with different eyes. Ambassador Demi continued, on behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I formally apologize for our treatment of your people. We judged you without understanding. We called you weak when you are anything but. 800 of your soldiers did what 20,000 of ours could not. They held against impossible odds and won. The chamber was silent. An apology from the High Arbiter was unprecedented. Demi kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt vindicated. Apology accepted, High Arbiter. Now let's discuss Earth's true place in this confederation. The negotiations took 6 hours. When they ended, humanity had achieved full military membership. Humans would have voting rights. Human commanders would lead mixed-species units. Earth would establish its own military academies, and other species would be invited to train there. But the most significant change happened quietly, person by person, across the entire Confederation military. General On requested a meeting with Commander Wu. The alien general arrived at the human quarters without his usual entourage, without ceremony. He stood in front of Wu and did something no one had ever seen him do before. He bowed. I was a fool, On said simply. I judged your worth by my own standards and found you lacking. I never considered that you might have different strengths, better strengths. I am asking for your forgiveness, and more than that, I am asking for your help. Teach us what you know. Wu studied the general for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. We're soldiers, General. We understand each other. Let's move forward. They shook hands, and a new era began. Within weeks, human military advisors were stationed on every Confederation base. Captain found herself teaching hand-to-hand combat to elite alien forces. Her first class had 30 students, all of them larger and physically stronger than her. Size doesn't matter in a fight, she told them on the first day. Speed matters, precision matters, understanding your opponent matters. I'm going to teach you how to fight like a human. The training was brutal. Alien soldiers who thought they were tough learned that they had been going easy on themselves, pushed them harder than they'd ever been pushed. She made them run until their legs gave out, then made them run more. She taught them to fight when exhausted, when injured, when hopeless. Pain is just information, she would say. Fear is just a chemical reaction. You can push through both. By the end of the first month, her students moved differently. They thought differently. They had learned to embrace discomfort and turn it into strength. Several of them went on to become instructors themselves, spreading human combat philosophy across the Confederation. Lieutenant was assigned to the Confederation's Cyber Warfare Division. The aliens had sophisticated technology, but they used it in predictable ways. Taught them to think like hackers, to look for weaknesses others wouldn't see. Technology is only as good as the mind using it, he explained to a room full of confused alien programmers. You have better computers than us, but we learned to win fights with worse equipment. That taught us creativity. That taught us to find solutions others miss. He demonstrated by hacking into the base's security system in under 5 minutes, using nothing but a basic tablet. The aliens were stunned, had exploited 3 vulnerabilities they didn't know existed. Within months, Confederation networks became significantly more secure, and their offensive cyber capabilities increased by 40%. Sergeant Jin Ho's contribution came in engineering and explosives. He was assigned to work with the Confederation's weapons development team. They showed him their latest bomb designs, expecting him to be impressed. He wasn't. "This is inefficient," he said, pointing at schematics. "You're wasting 30% of the explosive force, and the detonation system is too complicated. Simpler is better in combat. Let me show you." Using Confederation materials but human design principles, Jin Ho created explosives that were cheaper, easier to produce, and 40% more effective. His designs were adopted across the entire military within 3 months. Private Na became the Confederation's chief sniper instructor. Alien snipers came from across the galaxy to train with her. She was young and small, but when she picked up a rifle, she was transformed. "Shooting is 90% mental," she told her students. "Your body will do what your mind tells it to. If you believe the shot is possible, it becomes possible. I've made kills at ranges your instructors said were impossible. They were wrong. Nothing is impossible if you're willing to work for it." She taught them patience, breathing control, and most importantly, confidence. Her students started breaking records. Shots that had been considered extreme became routine. Dr. Mi Young revolutionized Confederation combat medicine. She introduced triage concepts the aliens had never considered. She taught them to work faster, to make hard decisions, to save the maximum number of lives with limited resources. "In human medicine, we accept that we can't save everyone," she explained. "So we focus on saving who we can. That's not cruelty, that's wisdom." Her methods reduced combat deaths across the Confederation by 23% in the first year. Then Admiral Wu Jin arrived with Earth's fleet. The ships weren't as large as Confederation vessels. They didn't have the same advanced technology, but they were designed differently, built by people who understood that wars were won through strategy, not just firepower. Wu Jin met with the Confederation military leadership. He was an older man with white hair and calm eyes. "Our ships are smaller," he said, "but they're faster and more maneuverable. We designed them to fight enemies with better technology than us. That's exactly what the Devourers are." He demonstrated with war games. Human ships danced around larger Confederation vessels, striking from unexpected angles, using terrain and debris as cover. They were teaching the aliens to fight like underdogs, because humans had always been underdogs. The Confederation integrated human ship designs and tactics into their fleet. Within 6 months, they were winning battles they would have lost before. Specialist, a human engineer, made perhaps the most significant contribution. He studied Confederation weapons and found ways to improve their efficiency. His modifications increased weapon output by 40% while reducing energy consumption by 20%. "You built these weapons to be powerful," he explained. "We build our weapons to be efficient. Combine both approaches and you get something better than either alone." His work earned him a position on the Confederation Science Council, the first human to hold such an honor. Subcommander Ara became General Wu's second-in-command. Their partnership became a symbol of the new Confederation, human and alien, working together as equals. "You taught me something important," Ara told Wu one evening after a successful mission. "You taught me that strength comes in many forms. My people valued size and power. Yours value adaptability and determination. Together, we're stronger than either could be alone. The war against the Devourers began to turn. The creatures found themselves fighting an enemy that had learned from humanity. Confederation soldiers now fought with human tenacity. They used human tactics. They showed human courage. And the Devourers, for the first time in 50 years, began to lose. High Arbiter addressed the galaxy in a broadcast that was watched by trillions. We invited humanity to join us as a protected species. We treated them as inferior. We learned painfully that we were the ones who needed to learn. Humanity has taught us that strength is not just physical. It's mental. It's emotional. It's the refusal to quit even when victory seems impossible. Today, I am proud to announce that Earth has been granted full membership in the Confederation Council. And more than that, I am proud to call humans our friends. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. They had proven themselves to the galaxy. They had earned respect not through words but through action. In the military bases across Confederation space, human and alien soldiers trained together, fought together, and formed bonds that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed it. 1 year after first contact, Confederation intelligence finally found what they had been searching for 50 years, the location of the Devourer Queen. She was buried deep within the Devourer, protected by millions of her children. The Queen was the center of the hive mind. Kill her, and the entire Devourer species would collapse into chaos. But reaching her would require penetrating the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. The Confederation Council debated for 3 days. Many argued it was impossible, too dangerous. The casualties would be catastrophic. Then General Wu stepped forward with a plan. "We can do this," he said simply, "but we need to fight this battle the human way." His plan was bold to the point of madness. A combined force of 50,000 soldiers, 30,000 human, 20,000 alien would strike directly at but they wouldn't fight their way through. They would infiltrate. "The Devourers think like a hive," Wu explained. "They expect direct assaults. They don't understand stealth. We're going to use that against them." Admiral Wu Jin would command the space battle, keeping the Devourer fleet busy. Meanwhile, small teams would land on the surface and work their way underground toward the Queen's chamber. It was a strategy that relied on every lesson humanity had taught the Confederation over the past year. The mission launched at dawn. Wu Jin's fleet engaged the Devourer defenders immediately. The space battle was intense, ships exploding in brilliant flashes against the black of space. The human vessels danced between the larger ships, drawing fire, creating chaos. The Devourers had never fought an enemy that moved like this. "All attack ships pattern Delta 7, Wu Jin ordered calmly from his flagship. The human-designed tactics were working. The Devourers were confused, their formations breaking apart. While the space battle raged, transport ships slipped through the gaps and landed on the planet's surface. The assault teams emerged into a nightmare world. The Devourer was covered in organic structures that pulsed like living flesh. The air smelled of decay. Millions of Devourers crawled across the landscape. Captain led the primary infiltration team. 50 soldiers, human and alien together, moving through tunnels that wound deep into the planet. They wore special suits that masked their scent and heat signatures. They moved in absolute silence. "Contact ahead," whispered Private Na, who was on point with her rifle. 20 targets. "Hold position," ordered. She moved forward alone, her knives already in her hands. The Devourers never knew what hit them. Moved like a shadow, her blades finding vital points with perfect precision. In 90 seconds, all 20 creatures were dead. The team moved past their bodies and deeper into the tunnels. Lieutenant was running the cyber warfare component of the mission from orbit. He had spent months studying Devourer communications, and now he unleashed his masterpiece. False signals flooded the hive mind network, sending devourers rushing to defend positions that weren't under attack. He was making the entire species look the wrong way. Queen's chamber is 3 miles ahead, he reported to. You have a clear path for the next 10 minutes. Copy that, moving. The team ran through the tunnels, their equipment silent on the fleshy ground. They passed chambers filled with devourer eggs and nurseries. Any one of these rooms held thousands of potential enemies, but the soldiers stayed focused on their mission. Sergeant Jin Ho had rigged antimatter charges throughout the tunnels, small devices that wouldn't be noticed until it was too late. When the team extracted, these charges would collapse the entire tunnel system. But that was for later. First, they had to reach the Queen. They encountered heavier resistance as they got closer. The Queen's royal guard were different from regular devourers, larger, faster, smarter. Colonel Sung's unit engaged them in a side tunnel, buying time for his team to push forward. Go, Sung shouted, his rifle barking. We've got this. Dr. Mi Young was with the medical support team at the landing zone. She had prepared for massive casualties. The staging area was a field hospital ready to receive hundreds of wounded. She stood ready, hoping she wouldn't be needed, knowing she would be. The space battle was reaching its peak. Admiral Wu Jin's flagship took a direct hit, shields failing. All power to engines, he ordered. Ram formation. Show these creatures what humans do when cornered. His ship accelerated directly at the largest devourer vessel, weapons blazing. The aliens on his crew thought he was crazy. Then they understood. The devourer ship tried to evade, pulling ships out of formation to avoid collision. Wu Jin pulled up at the last second, his guns raking the exposed belly of the enemy ship. It exploded in a ball of fire. That's for Earth, Wu Jin said quietly. Underground, his team reached the final chamber. The Queen's room was massive, the size of a football stadium, and in the center sat the Queen herself, a creature so large she could barely move. Her body was bloated with eggs, pulsing with life. Around her stood 100 royal guards. Specialist Europe said, had designed a weapon specifically for this mission. A device that would disrupt the Queen's biological processes, killing her without requiring them to fight through the guards. He activated it, and the device began to hum. The Queen screamed. It was a sound that echoed through the hive mind across the entire species. Every devourer in the galaxy felt her pain. The royal guards charged. The humans and aliens opened fire, cutting down the first wave, but more kept coming. This would be the hard part. Private Nuff found a high position and began taking precise shots. Each bullet dropped a guard, but there were too many. They would be overwhelmed. That's when Sub-Commander Ara made her move. She had insisted on being part of the final assault team. Now she showed why. She activated a device that emitted a sound frequency that hurt devourers but not other species. The guards stumbled, disoriented. Now shouted. The team charged forward. It was brutal close-quarters combat. Fought like a demon, her knives red with blood. The alien soldiers matched her intensity, inspired by her courage. For every soldier that fell, 2 guards died. The device reached maximum power. The Queen convulsed and went still. Her massive body deflated like a punctured balloon. Across the galaxy, every devourer stopped moving. The hive mind had collapsed. Some fell dead instantly. Others wandered aimlessly, their connection severed. The species that had terrorized the Confederation for 50 years was broken in a single moment. Target eliminated, reported, breathing hard. All teams extract now. The retreat was chaotic. Sergeant Jin Ho triggered his charges, collapsing tunnels behind them. The team ran through exploding passages, chunks of rock falling around them. 3 soldiers didn't make it out. They died heroes, their sacrifice remembered. The fleet picked them up and jumped to safety. Behind them, the devourer burned. The casualties were heavy. 1,500 soldiers died in the assault, 30% of the strike force, but they had accomplished what many thought impossible. The war was over. Peace negotiations began within weeks. The remaining devourers, freed from their hive mind, became individuals. Many of them were actually peaceful. The war had been driven by the Queen's hunger, not their natural state. A memorial was built on the Confederation capital world, a massive wall with the names of every soldier who died fighting the devourers, human and alien names side by side. The inscription read, "They were called weak. They proved unbreakable." Ambassador Demi became the first human arbiter on the Confederation Council. She stood before the gathered representatives and spoke about unity, sacrifice, and the power of working together. Earth's military academies became the most prestigious in the galaxy. Young soldiers of every species competed for the chance to train with human instructors. They wanted to learn the secrets of humanity's strength. General Wu survived the final assault, though he was badly wounded. He spent 3 months recovering in a hospital, visited constantly by soldiers of every species who wanted to thank him. When he finally returned to duty, he was offered a position as Supreme Commander of Confederation forces. He declined. "I'm a soldier, not a politician," he said. "Put me where I can train the next generation." So he became the head instructor at the New Earth Military Academy. Every morning, he stood on the training grounds and watched young humans and aliens run drills together. They moved as one unit now, no longer divided by species or prejudice. One evening, Captain found him standing alone, looking at the sunset. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how we got here," Wu replied. "A year ago they thought we were nothing, weak, useless. Now look at us. We showed them what humans are made of." "No," Wu said, shaking his head. "We showed them what anyone can be made of when they refuse to quit, when they fight for something worth fighting for. That's not just a human trait, that's a universal trait. We just happen to perfect it first." Smiled, "You really believe that?" "I know it. Look at our alien allies. They learned from us and now they're just as determined, just as fierce. The strength was always there. They just needed someone to show them how to use it." Below them, a group of mixed-species soldiers practiced hand-to-hand combat, human instructors guiding alien students. The future of the Confederation was being built right there, one training session at a time. Wu watched them and felt something he hadn't felt since this all began. Peace. Not just the absence of war, but real peace. The knowledge that they had built something lasting. "We didn't win because we were stronger," he said quietly. "We won because we never stopped fighting, and that's a lesson worth teaching." The sun set on the academy, painting the sky red and gold. A new day was coming, a better day, and humanity had helped make it possible.